Welcome back to the Rum Brothers. Today we have a special interview with Pete Johnson of Tatuaje Cigars, the one and only. We had a lot of fun talking to him, talked about all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Talked about rum, talked about cigars, the pairings, and you'll see. We had a great conversation, and he's a really cool guy, so
Yes, enjoy. It's a long one, but it's a fun one. So yeah, sit back, relax, or if you're driving, don't look at it, just listen to it. And
don't sit back and relax.
Yeah. If you're driving, please focus on the
yeah.
wheel. Focus on the cars on the road. But it's a lot of fun. He's a great guy, and we really enjoy talking to him. So listen, enjoy.
One leaf thing behind me. Let me see if I can get it in the picture.
There you go. Well,
Yeah, just for foliage, no.
That's great.
I think it was better without it.
Yeah. Oh wait, we are recording.
we are recording. Okay,
Everything
look
is
at that.
working.
All right.
So Pete Johnson in the flesh. This is quite the treat for us. I've ever since I started watching cigar content online, watching the interviews you did with Boveda a few years ago, or is it Boveda, Boveda? How are you supposed to say it?
I really don't know.
That's funny.
I mean, I've been using it for, I don't know how many years they've been out, forever, and I've hung out with the guys that own the company multiple times at wine tastings and stuff, and I still have no clue
Oh, hilarious.
if they say Boveda or Boveda or Boveda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I can't remember how I say it now that you totally mixed me up.
Yeah. Well, starting with confusion. That's
Yeah,
good.
there we go. But yeah, and it's just quite a treat to be talking to you, actually us talking to you. This is very cool.
So
Very cool.
Yeah. So Thomas is definitely more the enthusiast. Our first introduction to cigars was at my wedding, or Marine.
Last week?
Yeah, last week. Yeah.
No, but
A few years back.
yeah, 16. So our Marine buddy, he brought out cigars, and they're like, oh, and then I was
what's this?
we can get used to this. So
Right.
thus
Yeah.
began the whole thing. So
Yeah, and
Well, wait, when did you get married? In 2000 what?
16.
Okay, so by the time you got into the pandemic, you were like, let's go.
Pretty much. Yeah.
yes.
Let's go.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Yeah, and our,
Cool.
both grandfathers smoked cigars, and our uncle, growing up, the smell of cigar smoke, made us feel like we were at home, kind of a deal. And so, and our uncle was like, one day you'll aspire to smoke cigars, and it was very true. And so here we are today.
Yeah.
So let's start off. We'll talk about what we're smoking.
Okay.
I love this size. We're smoking the Cabawan and the Bellicoso.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
And we are pairing it today.
We are day drinking today.
Yes. Well, they don't. It's evergreen on YouTube. It could be the evening. It's the summertime.
Do you have a glass of something, actually?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So
We'll be trying a couple things.
yeah. So we have a bunch of things. I personally love pairing Connecticut wrapped cigars with Irish whiskey.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
And I specifically love this, the Bushmills 10-year single
Bushmills
malt.
10 is very nice.
And it's super light, and it's just lovely to drink and kind of dangerous because it's so lovely tasting. And
We've been doing all the tastings a while, so we so used to barrel proof anything. 80
Yeah.
proof is like.
Yeah, yeah, it's that can be a lot. So I want to congratulate you on 20 years of
Yeah.
Tatuaje. That's very cool.
Thank you. It's been a big ride already for this year. Honestly, I don't have half the stuff that I'm supposed to come out with ready.
Oh no.
So most of the stuff that's labeled 20 years will come out on my 22nd year, which is okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, at least.
I'm not in a hurry.
yeah. Why not?
Do it right? So.
Speaking of what you're drinking, have you tried a Irish whiskey called Clonokilty?
I have not, but it's on my list of things to try.
They did a cigar blend. I actually did a few events with them.
Oh, cool.
Nice people from that company, and the whiskey's pot stilled, so it's like old school.
Oh, I love that.
It's really, really good stuff. It's definitely not a proper 12, but
Yeah.
you know.
My wife's family is from County Cork, where Clonakilty is, and we drove by it when we were, because the ancestral home is in Baltimore, which is on the coast. It's very pretty. It's also very remote and very scary driving down all the windy roads to get there on the other side.
Yeah.
But the Clonakilty distillery is beautiful. Like, I drove by it and it had big glass walls and you could see the pot stills. So it's very cool.
It's like right on a cliff, right?
I don't know.
Right on the ocean?
Yeah, it's very close to the ocean.
Yeah.
They did a barrel edition with a whiskey distillery in Virginia, Catoctin Creek.
Oh, yeah.
And they have fantastic rye, so they have a Irish whiskey barreled in that, but I haven't tried it yet, so it's on my list. You recommend, I assume?
Yeah, I mean, great people. I know one of the guys that is a part owner of the company, and when they came to the United States, they were looking for someone to kind of launch this cigar blend that they did.
Cool.
And it's super good. It's aged in spent beer barrels that were imperial stout barrels that were once bourbon barrels.
Oh, interesting.
So basically, an imperial stout that took some bourbon barrels, aged their beer in it, and then they took it and aged Irish whiskey in it. So it's pretty trippy. Yeah,
that's cool.
It's got a nice thickness to it.
Neat. Yeah, the single pot. I love single pot stills because they're so they're just big and oily, and it like coats your whole mouth, and it's just and it's really lovely to pair with cigars. I also could have brought out our Redbreast 12-year, which is always a go-to.
That's an easy one.
Yeah,
I'm a 15 guy, but the 12 is always an easy one.
That's my I hope to get. I tried the 15 a few months ago, and I loved it. I just need to find a place where it's not too crazy expensive.
Yeah, I mean, my first bottle of 15 was given to me, and I didn't know the reality of what Redbreast 15 was.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, this stuff's really good, and I had no idea that it was like something really special. So.
Yeah, I'm mad at myself. I mean, when we were at the duty-free shop in Shannon in Ireland, I got Red Spot, the 15-year.
Oh, yeah.
And that is fantastic. And it was like €100. But the Redbreast 15-year there was 75, and I should have gotten that too. But I guess we weren't.
You're allowed to.
Yeah. I should have, but it's like, do we need to spend this much money on whiskey? And,
yes,
my
the
wife.
answer's always yes.
The answer's always yes. All right, I need to put you in touch with my wife, for sure.
You gave me permission.
Listen, my wife blames me for getting her into drinking. Like, she tells me all the time, I never had any drop of alcohol before I met you.
Really?
And I'm like, I'm calling bullshit. But according to my sister-in-law and according to my brother-in-law, she never drank, but she would skip school a lot, and that's it.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
So,
but not to drink.
I still don't believe her.
Well, that brings me to something I wanted to talk to you about. And I think it's so cool that, and I'm a romantic at heart, but it's so cool that you ended up with Don Pepin's daughter. I think it's such a neat story.
Yeah, I'd like to say I'm married to the mob. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. That's horrible.
Hey,
There
you're
is a
talking to
movie
two
about it.
Yeah, I
Italians
was
here.
about to say.
I got that's 50% of my bloodline. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, my mom's side. She's got a last name. We say Suzo, the American version, but it's Suezzo or something like that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's
And
neat.
she's from outside of Naples.
Oh.
Yeah.
Very
Where-
cool.
Well, my grandparents. She was born in the States.
Yeah. All right.
But I'm married to Pepin's daughter. It was the worst kept secret for a long time when we were dating, because it was always that question mark whether or not, like, what if we don't like each other? We still have to work together.
Yeah.
But eventually, we became best friends first, and then we realized that we were meant to, be hanging out with each other full time. So I finally made the commitment. It took me a long time, but I finally made that commitment.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it is really
Yeah.
cool.
And this was something that confused me when I was first got into cigars. I assumed, oh, this guy, Pete Johnson, he owns like everything. He's in charge of everything from like, from packaging to like, running the factory and all that stuff. Can you explain what it means to be a brand owner? Or in your case specifically?
I'm essentially a fashion designer. For the lack of better words, I'm a blender. I'm a brand creator. Like the best analogy you could probably have would be Steve Jobs, who, he owned a lot of Apple, but he would walk in the room and tell a bunch of guys that knew how to do shit, and they would do it.
Yeah.
But Steve didn't really know how to do it. He just had the vision of how he wanted it and how it should be. And I like to say, when it comes to the fashion analogy, I make the pattern, I pick out the materials, but I have professionals sew it up for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really clever analogy.
So you're not in there rolling it yourself.
No, I don't think you'd like that.
Have you ever tried your hand on a?
Yeah. It's hard to get yelled at by a Spanish person while you're not twisting your arm in the right direction, because there's a way to turn your hand when you have the bunch, and if you don't do that correctly, they're going to yell at you. And I have naturally shaky hands anyway, so I'm like, no, like lock me up in a room with a guy that cares to teach, and I'll practice. But to do it in front of like 100 people, I'll be like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't make sense. There are, I'm in the factory every day here in Miami, and there are rollers that have been with us since 20 years ago.
Wow.
The reality is that I don't go into the gallery and do anything but say hello and thank you very much. I go into the gallery to do that. I can't teach them anything. They already know what they're doing. I'm not going to tell them how to bunch it differently because they already know what they're doing. The blends and the patterns are already picked out and ready to go, so they know how to sew it up.
Gotcha. And well, first, how should I refer to your father-in-law? Is it Don Pepin? Like how should I?
Yeah, I mean, his name is Jose Garcia.
Okay.
People just call him Pepin.
Pepin.
Yeah, I mean, the Don name is weird because it's a nickname. Don Pepin is a nickname, especially in Cuba, for people with the name Jose Garcia.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so a lot of times you'll see Don Pepin or Don Pepe, but it just became this thing, and since he's the patriarch of the family, they call him the Don.
Oh,
or
gotcha.
Don Pepin. But everybody knows him as Pepin.
Okay.
Anybody who knows him doesn't say, hey, Don Pepin. Yeah. They say, hey, Pepin.
It's like Don Pepin.
Yeah. let me kiss the ring. It would work well in your Italian world.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
What are your last names so I know? Oh, yeah, you're super Italian.
Yeah, it's Sicilian.
Yeah.
Which, depending on who you talk to, it's like it's just Sicilian and it's not Italian. So how people get.
Yeah, so my mom's Italian then.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have the Sicilian blood.
Yeah, and it's I don't know if you've ever been to
We're
Sicily.
outside of Naples in the countryside.
Right. And I saw from Instagram that you went to Rome, which it was very cool.
Yeah, we were in Portofino, we were in Pisa, La Spezia, and then Rome, of course. We didn't have a lot of time to get to a lot of places because we were doing a cruise with the kids, and I took 12 people wine tasting one day.
Whoa!
And that was like an all-day trip. We got back like an hour before the boat left, and took off like 20 minutes after the boat arrived.
Wow.
So we were out all day. We were day drinking for sure.
Wow. So what is your favorite Roman pasta dish?
Well, I'm a cacio e pepe guy.
Yeah.
But my wife is for sure a carbonara person. Plus, our friends in Italy kind of taught her how to make it properly. So she doesn't use bacon or any of that crap. She uses real, what do they call it? Guanciale.
Yeah.
The pig cheek when she makes carbonara. So
Oh, wow.
she makes a mean carbonara.
That's cool.
Yeah.
No, yeah, those are my two favorites too. I mean, Gricia and Amatriciana, they're
Oh,
they're
my
good.
God.
Yeah, but it's
Well,
like
yeah, but Grecian is like a cross between the two.
right. Yeah.
That's what I had the other day in Rome. I had Gricia from this place called Osteria Fortunata in Rome, and they roll the pasta right in front of you.
Oh, cool.
And
Table-side pasta.
The Grecia's, it's cacio e pepe with guanciale.
Yeah.
So did you have any of what's the Roman variety, the Cesanese, I believe?
Oh, the wine.
The wine.
No, it was so hot in Rome. I drank a lot of Aperol spritzes
Sure.
and a lot of Negronis.
Ooh, yeah.
You know, Negroni at night, still refreshing though.
Yes.
But Aperol spritz is like water to me now.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually almost poured myself one for this
Oh, you should have.
Yeah.
because it's kind of hot here right now. I actually have a fan blowing at me. I feel like I'm in a studio.
Yeah. It's not exactly.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was low 80s.
Good. You know.
Yeah, and
It's not
but,
as hot as it's been.
but it's
here.
like it's above 90 right
Yeah.
now.
It's just, you know.
But have you ever seen the Garfield comic books where some guy took out Garfield out of all the strips, so it's just John by himself? It's hilarious. You should look it up.
It's kind of depressing too. But
Yeah, because it's just like kind of sad and depressing that John is just by himself, and it's just like him, just like kind of looking sad all the time. It's pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
You know, Dylan, I don't know if this will offend you or you'll appreciate this, but you sound a little bit like Don Jr.
I have never gotten that, but okay.
There you go.
Now you're going to watch a video to see if it's correct, but it's pretty spot on. You could get away with impersonations,
Yeah,
voiceovers.
Yeah, that would be funny. Yeah, go to audition for SNL.
Yeah, it's my shot big time, right?
Well, when we were in high school, it was when the Jonas Brothers were big, and I know you have a Jonas Brothers connection. And so because you know, three brothers in high school, and I had curly hair and the other two had straight hair, so it was
Yeah.
like, oh, it's the Jonas Brothers.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, we got-
So Dylan's Joe,
Yeah, there you go.
I guess maybe.
and wait. So are you the middle brother or the older?
I'm the
brother?
youngest brother.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'm in the middle.
Yeah, and Frank's the oldest.
You're in the middle. So you would be Joe, and Dylan would be Nick.
Yeah, and Nick is the one with the curly hair, right?
No, double. Nick's got straighter hair now, but Kevin.
Kevin was a curly haired one. Oh,
I didn't even know there was one named Kevin.
oh, well, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I will
that's,
say that your guys are breaking out a little bit every once in a while. I don't know if it's my Wi-Fi or your Wi-Fi.
oh, interesting.
It's clear on our end.
And usually Riverside is. That's the crazy thing about this program. It could look like it's buffering, but it ends up coming out crystal clear.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's coming through fine here.
yeah.
So.
Perfect.
But you can hear pretty much everything we say.
This is Tech Talk with the Rum Brothers and Pete Johnson.
Right, yeah. but you can hear most of what we're saying, right?
Oh, no, yeah, it's not that. Every once in a while your screen goes fuzzy.
Oh, okay, yes. There was an alert that popped up that said we can be fuzzy, and like you're fuzzy right now, but they said that's okay.
They said.
They.
They said.
Yeah, yeah.
The guy in the computer said it.
Cool.
Kind of mean if he's saying that I'm fuzzy. That's like, I haven't even had a drink yet.
So what are you smoking today?
I'm smoking a cigar that I nicknamed the 50 Ford.
Ooh, what's the story?
A buddy of mine called me. He was in Cannes at the film festival, and he was smoking cigars with Harrison Ford. And
Wow.
he happened to be smoking a particular cigar that was much bigger. And Harrison supposedly mentioned to him that he would love one smaller, so I created another size that was smaller, and I just made it for us to smoke.
That's cool.
So it's a joke. It's like a nickname to the cigar. And
Oh, gotcha.
we don't sell them. We just I made a bunch of them. They're a 4x54, and they're made in Miami, and I just made a bunch of smoke.
Cool. What's the blend?
It's a little stronger. It's kind of in between like the regular brown label and the Especiale blend. So it's not as strong as like the Coho New stuff.
Oh, gotcha.
But it's a little bit more passive. But it's still, that blend alone is still pretty heavy, but really easy to smoke.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like these. I mean, just in case we don't have our footage from before, we're smoking the Cabaiwan and the Bellicoso.
This is top 3 cigars. So my favorite brands, it's been Tatuaje and My Father. Those have been, and I could sound stupid. I don't know.
No. Those are, I mean, you're talking to the right guy to tell that to.
Who's the third company? You can only name 2.
I would say top 3 cigars. Then I switched to brands. But
those 3.
I do like the, and again, this is where I point like that one. The Don Pepin, the blue wrap one.
Yeah, the original is one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
That's the classic. That's the OG.
Yeah.
That's obviously his cigar. That's the one that everybody knows. There's other color labels in the Don Pepin line, but
that's the
blue
one that
is
you
always
find everywhere. Yeah.
And that one's still made in Miami. Is that right?
Yeah, the majority of the stuff that's produced in Miami now is Tatuaje product, but Don Pepin Blue, certain sizes obviously, and then the rest of the stuff that we do, because we can only make about 400,000 cigars a year in Miami.
Okay.
But in Nicaragua, you're talking about a lot more. That's like... That technically could be like 4 days worth of work in Nicaragua.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And so your stuff that's made in Miami is the brown label is made in Miami.
Yeah. Some of the the Escasos are made in Miami also. The 3 of the Coho News, actually 4 of the Coho News, and then 2 of the Grand Coho News. Mm-hmm. And then all the other newer Coho News are made in Nicaragua.
Gotcha.
So now recently I just changed the band for the Miami product so you can actually see that it's made in Miami because it has a gold accent.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
So if you see a band, you're going to see cigars on the shelves for a few years coming up where you're going to see a crossover, obviously. But if you start seeing these bands that have this gold accent, you know that those were made in Miami.
Okay, cool.
But it's a lot easier just to look at the bottom of the box also.
Yeah.
So one thing that I always found interesting is how the sourcing for the tobacco goes, and like listening to some interviews and reading some stuff. It seems like you almost have to constantly be shifting based on how crops are doing. And could you talk a little bit about how much of a issue that is in making cigars, or what the
well, basically every year the crops change automatically. They don't go absolutely out of whack. You're going to get pretty close. Mm-hmm. But what we do, we don't shift farms, we just shift lots on those farms.
Okay.
So if something is kind of muted down and maybe there was too much rain on the farm and the soil, drained in a particular direction, the Ligero from that plot that we would use might be washed out a little bit where it's not as strong. Mm-hmm. So we might shift to the plot next to it that didn't retain as much moisture, and that will end up giving you that same balance that you have from your normal blend. But that's why the Garcias have been really good with planting a lot of tobacco every year and having a lot of choices, because they want to have multiple farms, but they also want to have multiple lots on those farms.
Sure.
so they can make those little shifts to make sure that the product tastes pretty darn close to how it's supposed to.
Yeah,
the reality is that you have to have a comfort zone of about this, because you're never going to get this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're never gonna be like, oh my God, it's the exact same cigar every time. That's the magic of tobacco and cigars. But if you have like a comfort zone of like, okay, within this space, no one's going to be able to tell that the blend is any different. But if you go outside of it, that's where you start running into problems.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I didn't mean to jump outline.
Oh no,
here,
no,
but-
no. The outline. We all come from like a performing arts background, and it's always like, when you're on stage, if you're acting or anything, it's like you got to know what you're going to do, but you got to be able to be, flexible once you're on stage. You got to be able to adapt. Go in with a plan and then adapt.
So along that same thread, like how often are you in Nicaragua?
Well, I used to be in Nicaragua like up to 14 times a year.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that changed a lot. Obviously, the pandemic made it change a lot. My brother-in-law is down there 20 days a month, and my nephew, Jaime's son, is down there around the same amount of time. So once Handy, Jaime's son, started going down there more often, he kind of took my brand to charge. Like that was like almost like his project to kind of oversee what was going on with Tatuaje product. So honestly, I have to thank him for making me travel less to Nicaragua.
That's cool.
I mean, I still go, but I don't need to go because I have someone down there that's constantly on top of my production.
That's really cool.
And I'll say that sometimes I just get in the way. Because I'll go down there and I'll start, working with the chief of production when he's trying to work. Because I don't like go to Jaime or anybody else to like get a blend done. I'll go to the chief of production. I'll tell him what tobaccos I need, and I need him to put it together like this, and he'll do it. But ultimately, I'm just taking him away from watching the whole gallery. So I usually just get in the way, and honestly, with the way technology works and the way the communication works, I can easily get on a Zoom or a FaceTime and communicate what I need with Handy, Jaime's son, and make sure that he's got all the materials that I need to do this project. But I'm always thinking about 2 years ahead. So I'm kind of always forecasting, like, do we have the inventory of this tobacco to make this next year? Because I want to make sure I already have the idea. I want to make this cigar. I have the samples done. I love it. And they're like, what do you want to place the order? I go, in 6 months, I'm going to place the order. Just set the tobacco aside. So, yeah, I'm kind of a pain in the ass with it. So that's why they're probably thankful I don't go down.
Yeah.
So you talk about Jaime's son. Do you think any of your kids are going to follow you into the business?
Well, I don't have kids. My wife, Yanni Garcia, obviously, she has 3 boys, which obviously I'm the dad to the 3 boys now. And they're all going to be in the business.
Oh, cool.
It's kind of an automatic. You got to go to college, and then you're coming to work for the family business.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's
really cool because they all enjoy it. They obviously the 15-year-old he doesn't understand everything we do yet, but we have a senior in college and a freshman in college this year. We're actually taking them up next week to take them to school, and they're really into it.
Neat.
Even at 18, the middle one, he obviously finds a way to smoke a cigar.
Yeah. They're going to be popular in college. They have a hookup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So the other thing we're pairing with is the Flor de Caña 18 year, which we talked about. I know you're.
That's what I was going to grab.
Whoa. Yeah. I know you're super into wine, which we can get into. But like, do you find that with rum, do you still have that similar kind of like terroir thing with wine in terms of like, it's all Nicaraguan tobacco, like we've got the black label lined up next. So
okay, well, Nicaraguan rum compared to Dominican rum, compared to Jamaican rum or rum from Puerto Rico, rum from Cuba, they're all so very different.
Yep.
But stuff from Barbados has this kind of a funk to it. really farminess to it. Like they're very vastly different style rums, and I remember doing a lot of rum tastings when I was younger because obviously rum was like the first thing we went to with cigars because it's the obvious, and it's a great pairing no matter what. I just don't drink as much of it as I used to because of the sugar content.
Gotcha.
But I do love it. It's just I get really messed up with it.
Well, I
Because
shouldn't
sometimes, you know, like,
Yeah.
we're always down in, when we do go down to Nicaragua, we usually bring a lot of people and we usually load up the truck with a lot of Florida Caña and maybe some bottles of Havana Club. And if the whiskey's dry, we start drinking rum.
Gotcha.
And yeah, I've gotten used to drinking rum on a hot day with a dark rum, but with some lime juice and ice. It's really refreshing. I don't put soda in anything anymore, so like I wouldn't do a rum and Coke or anymore. So
Yeah, that's just,
yeah, but I still love rum. I just don't drink it as much.
Gotcha. So what are you drinking mostly now? Is it mostly whiskey?
I've been shifting around a lot, but tequila,
Ooh.
obviously. I've been into tequila for a while, and then it became really trendy and really expensive.
Yeah.
But I still enjoy a good, clean tequila. One of my favorites right now is called Tequila Ocho, which is there's no additives at all in it, and super clean. Like an añejo looks like a normal reposado for most people.
Gotcha.
Yeah, or even a blanco for most people. It's that light.
yeah.
Wow.
But today I'm drinking Kirkland Italian sparkling mineral water.
All right. Well, there you go. And I learned that from a interview with Nick Melillo. He was like, that's one of my favorite things to drink with cigars, because it's something about the mineral water that kind of like cleanses your palate and makes it
It does. Yeah.
easier to taste. And actually leads me to a question. What do you taste when you're tasting, or what do you drink when you're tasting blends? Like what?
Mostly water. Yeah, mostly water. A lot of people use tea. I don't want to, and sometimes we'll do coffee. I don't drink as much coffee as I used to, but I find that just water is where I want my palate to be, because it's all about the tobacco for me,
Gotcha.
and I want it to be clean, because the coffee will impart some other sense.
Sure.
The tea will impart some other sense. Mineral water is really great for it because it does clean your palate a little bit. So, yeah, I would say mineral water and regular water.
Gotcha.
Bottled water, of course, in Nicaragua, because not drinking tap water down there.
Have you ever been to the Davidoff store in London, and have you met the Sahakians?
I have. I just got back from London, but I didn't go there to visit anybody but a friend of mine, and he happens to be friends with another cigar store who I'm friendly with also,
Oh, okay.
which is called Souders, or Souder, of London on Mount and Knightsbridge. And so I spent all my time there.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Edward, I've known Edward probably my whole life in the industry, because I've been in the industry for 30 years.
Wow.
But I haven't had my brand for only 20, so.
Yeah, and congrats if we don't get that in from the first. Congratulations on the 20 years.
Yeah, what we talked about in the last half hour.
Yeah, right. And I bring that up because Eddie Sahakian has a YouTube channel, of course, as most
Yes.
people do. And like I love listening to him because his voice and just the way he talks about things is so great. But he was like, when you're tasting, like, don't drink tea while you're smoking a cigar. Only drink tea when you're transitioning between different cigars. And he's like, I love to eat a banana in between the cigars too, because it helps to cleanse the palate. And do you have any tricks like that in between cigars?
No, not at all. If a cigar is actually getting me, they don't do this to me anymore, but when I was younger, if a cigar was getting me a little, like, queasy, I would take a sugar packet and down it.
Oh, I've heard that. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, sugar will stabilize your nauseousness. If you get a little queasy from smoking a heavy cigar, it Put a little sugar under your
So
tongue.
also
You're good.
why rum is a good pairing, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. So when we take cigars to our friends, we got to bring some sugar packets too.
Well, bring you know what you should do? Bring the old school Domino sugar cubes.
Oh, that would be
I
fun.
actually have some. Yeah.
You have some? Okay.
Yeah, because we drink tea like we're
Yeah.
Isn't that how we used to take vaccines when we were kids?
Yeah, a spoonful of sugar. That's right. I wanted to talk about how in Don Pepin's factory, how the rolling methods, because I think I've heard, and I know you'll know the answer, but the methods of rolling are different at his factory than like they are in the Dominican Republic. It has to do with like the number of rollers or the number of people who work on cigars. Is that right?
No. Well, I can't tell you how they do it in the Dominican Republic, but the bunching style that the Garcias use is called entubar. And it's basically you're turning in like little cones and then putting them together and then bunching the cigar from like that. But in regards to the style of what they do or how they roll and bunch and roll cigars in Nicaragua, they work in pairs. Mm-hmm. So there's a person bunching and then there's a person finishing the cigar. In Miami, they do everything very traditional, like how they do in Cuba, where the person who bunches the cigar finishes the cigar himself.
Oh, interesting.
So it's one person from start to finish on the same cigar. But traditionally in Central America and the Caribbean, they use pairs to do all the work.
Gotcha.
One person bunching where they, make the mold, they make the bunch, they put the binder on, put it in the press, and they get those bunches ready for the person that finishes the cigar with the beautiful wrapper.
And what's the, because I've heard that, is it some of the cigars you make they have double binders, or is that all of them?
All of them. Every cigar that the family makes uses double binders.
And what does that do?
Double binders is good for a few things. One, obviously, being construction, combustion, consistency with like the way that the blend will change as you smoke it. Structure is a huge reason why you would want to use two binders. The great thing about, again, to get complexity as you smoke the cigar, the two binders will constantly rotate through, so you'll get all these nuances more than just one binder, which most of the time most people use a binder as just as a neutral component, where there's nothing else, like there's not a lot of flavor to the binder. We use two unique binders. They're never the same, and they're always like a higher grade binder so that they actually have a lot of flavor. But the great thing about having two binders is that if you ever have a cigar that has a wrapper that's broken, you'll burn through without getting air pockets in the cigar. Because there's that two binders actually protects from,
That's
like
true,
if I
yeah.
ever drop my cigar on the floor and the wrapper cracked, I know I could light that up and still smoke through the cigar without getting air holes, trying to plug up air holes that have broken also because the binder, which is usually one very thin leaf,
Gotcha.
is broken. A lot of people use, I'm not going to say who, but obviously a lot of people use inexpensive, I don't want to use the word cheap, but inexpensive binders that are very thin and that are very neutral in flavor so that they don't have anything to offer to the blend. They want the fillers to make up the blend, and they want the wrapper to finish everything. They want the binder just to hold the blend together. The binders on the Garcia cigars are holding it together to add to the flavor.
Gotcha. In terms of like going back to pairing, because I know you talk about like Cuba is like what you always go back to. What in Cuba and like what the Garcia family does, what do they typically pair when they're smoking? In terms of beverage, like what do they usually pair when they smoke cigars, and what's customary in Cuba?
No, traditionally a lot of people use rum, but it's not always accessible.
Yeah.
So, water or tea. That a lot of what you hear from you guys like Eddie Sahakian are probably things that he learned from some Cuban person.
Oh, interesting.
But I traditionally, I know my father-in-law, he used to love drinking rum when he was smoking a cigar. He doesn't drink rum anymore, so he drinks a lot of water. My brother-in-law, when he's working, he'll drink water, but then when we finish the day, we'll go have some whiskey. He likes scotch, but at that point, you're not really pairing anymore. You're having a scotch and a cigar.
Gotcha. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, pairings are interesting for me because I have friends that are really into the whole pairing thing, and I just kind of smoke what I smoke and drink what I drink. I don't look at it as like, will this work?
Yeah.
It's the happy surprise when they go well together, but I don't want to force the narrative of like, oh, this will be great if you pair it like this, because
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
it won't be good for you. It might be good for me, right?
Yeah. I will say to our rum viewers, the Flor de Caña is a winner. I like the Bushmills. That was nice, but this definitely is going very nicely with the Cab I Won.
See, now I'm jealous because I actually like the idea of drinking some Flor de Caña right now.
Yeah. Go grab it.
It's like, it tastes so good, Pete.
Yeah.
I wish you had some.
Had some.
I'm so wired up, I can't even get out of this chair.
I'm sorry. We didn't mean to make it so complex.
So Pete, we're jumping time. We'll splice this together weird. I don't know. We have an outline, but I want to ask this question out. So you play bass,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So I play bass.
Oh, very cool.
And how on earth did you smoke a cigar and play bass at the same time?
Yeah, I had to learn to breathe properly because I would always have my head down. Mm-hmm. Because the way I played was kind of more. We started off as like a hair metal band or a hair glamish type of band, not so glam, not like Poison, more like Skid Row-ish.
Okay.
And then eventually evolved to where we were doing more like Alice in Chains style stuff.
Gotcha.
And I would always have my head down because I would use a pick, but a lot of times if it was like a heavier part of the song, I would down pick the whole time. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it got uncomfortable sometimes.
Smoke's in your face, yeah.
Yeah. But I would just, you know what it was that I always have, sometimes I'd have the cigar in my mouth while I would play something, but then I would put it down in like my little makeshift ashtray on top of my amp. And then from there, I would take a big puff between songs.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Yeah.
So what bass do you have?
Yeah, let's get into the gear.
Yeah,
We're
let's get into
gearheads.
the gear, yeah.
I have back in the old days, I had a ESP Thunderbird.
Ooh.
So a Thunderbird that was, obviously an ESP version. I ended up breaking the neck because I pogo sticked it at a show. I didn't break the neck. I kind of cracked it a little bit, but someone actually bought it off me, which is great. Being a starving musician, if someone wanted a piece of equipment and you needed to sell it, go for it.
Yeah.
I still have one of the two Charvel basses that I had. I have a Music Man Stingray, and then I have a Washburn that I got. It looks like a Les Paul body. I got when we played
cool.
the NAMM show. And then I have a Duesenberg bass.
Ooh.
My buddy owns the Duesenberg USA distribution.
Oh.
Wow.
And of course, I sent him a picture. I said, "Hey, do you have any of these lying around?" And he sent me a picture of Duff McKagan with that same bass on stage at Rock in Rio. And he goes, "You mean this one?" I go, "Yeah, that's the one." He goes, "I'll have it at your office next week."
Wow.
So I was like, I didn't say I wanted to buy it, but I ultimately bought it. He's a good dude, a big fan of the product,
Yeah.
and a friend of Tatuaje for sure.
That's awesome.
Do you play much anymore?
Well, I have. You can't see him because of the shadow, but They're all hanging. Well, not all of them. I have 6 guitars hanging on the wall behind me. And I was never a good guitar player because I wasn't a guitar player. I was a bass player. So whenever, my guitar players would let me play their guitar, I would just goof around. But I never owned a guitar. So, I don't know, several years ago, I started buying guitars. And mostly Duesenbergs.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Because, again, Nathan is the guy that owns Duesenberg USA. Is a good friend. And he always convinces me to buy a new guitar somehow.
It's a good salesman.
Yeah, sorry. I'm like getting phone calls from Amazon delivery, which means they're trying to get to my office. I'm gonna. You guys can cut this anyways, but I'm gonna text my guys.
No, do it.
Amazon is delivering.
Take this opportunity.
Oh yeah, you could light. Yeah, big fan of the black label. The Corona Gorda is one of my favorite sizes.
Sorry, my apologies.
No worries.
This is the magic of editing.
You bet.
Now we're gonna leave all this in.
Yeah. Pete Johnson texted Amazon delivery driver. That'll be the title of the video.
No, I actually
Endorses
texted all.
water.
I just texted every person in my building in Los Angeles to say Amazon's trying to deliver. All right, cool. Sorry about that.
No worries.
No worries. Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah, this is.
You're doing the black label Corona Gorda?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Also bought at Draper's in DC.
Classic.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a classic. It's got a great story behind it.
Well, let's hear it.
Well, let's hear the story. Wait, no, we don't want to hear the story.
no, not
No
that
stories.
story.
I don't know if I want to tell it.
Yeah.
Here, let me. Well, I'll chew on this while I tell the story.
Oh no! If you need to go get another one, this is a perfect time to stop.
No, I have a whole bag of these Anarchy cigars that I'm doing. So I'll smoke one of those next.
Cool.
But yeah, I was in 2007. I went to Havana. Well, I went to Cuba with the Garcias. I actually got on a plane from LA to Costa Rica, got off that plane, and walked to the next gate, which was going to Havana.
Wow.
And I said, I already have a ticket on this plane, but they had to make sure they printed the ticket for me because I couldn't print it online. And went to Havana. This is 2007. And when I got there, the funny thing is that Jaime Garcia and his father-in-law picked me up at the airport. And they offered me a cigar, and I thought they were going to give me a Cuban cigar to smoke, which is funny. They gave me a box of Cojonus to smoke. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool, and it's magical the way things change when they hit a different climate.
Oh, interesting.
Because I actually felt like there was something so like cool and different about the Cojonu in Cuba, and the fact that I could smoke my own cigar over there, like not knowing that I was going to be smoking my own cigar, was kind of fun. Well, from Havana to where they grew up, which is a small town called Baez, Cuba, is about a 4.5 hour drive.
Wow.
So it's a long drive. So I might have smoked a couple of them. And of course, they had a party as soon as we got into town. They had a party because the gringo is in Cuba, and I don't know what happened, but I met a lot of people the night before, and I recognized a lot of people. Just they were all different characters, so you just kind of put people in your head, and you're like, okay, that guy is wearing that outfit. He kind of looks like he wears that outfit all the time. So that night when I went to bed, I woke up in the middle of the night. I could not breathe, like I just couldn't breathe. My nostrils were just completely, covered up and everything. And of course, my now mother-in-law looked at her sister and said, Viva Peru. And I was like, what's Viva Peru? That's how they say Vicks Vapor Rub.
Oh.
So, Viva Peru. so they slapped a bunch on my chest, and then they put a little bit on my nostrils, and I went back to bed, and I fell asleep like a little baby. It was awesome.
It's cool.
But the next morning, I woke up to take a shower, and the house had running water, but it was only cold. So I went to the bathroom, and they're like, "Oh, wait, before you go, take this." And I could understand a little bit of Spanish back then, but not as well as I do now. So I could understand that they wanted me to take it, but it was a bucket of water that they were heating up with something that looked like a curling iron, right? So it was basically to take a cup and take a shower. So it was kind of like a very simple thing. I had no cell service, which was great. I had no one bothering me. I was in the middle of the island, having a great time, and I finished getting ready for the morning, and I went out to the front stoop of the house, which overlooked like this little baseball park. And one of the guys in those outfits drove by on like an old Schwinn, and he had cigars in his pocket, and he recognized me from the night before, and he pulled one of his cigars out of his pocket and gave it to me. And it was a homemade cigar, like a super rustic, just simple cigar. And I lit it up. And as I went back to the back of the house, Pepin said, "Where'd you get that?" I go, "The guy with the bicycle, the hat, and the khaki pants and the guayabera, he gave it to me." And Pepin said, "Do you like those?" This is all in Spanish. Obviously, I'm telling you the English version because I can't speak that good Spanish. And I said, "Yeah, I absolutely love cigars like this because it's simple." And he goes, "I'll have a few more made, and you'll have to go pick them up at some of my friends' houses." So I would go to like other people's houses, and we would knock on the door. They would see the person I was with, and they would come back with like a handful of these cigars.
That's crazy.
So ultimately, I kind of fell in love with one particular version of it. And I told Pepin and Jaime that when we get back to Nicaragua, I want to make something like this for me. So that cigar right there was actually my personal cigar for a while.
Oh, cool.
And it was meant to be kind of gnarly and rustic, and that's why it has the covered foot and the fuma head.
Yeah, that's a neat head.
And ultimately, we made the first batch. I put them in ceramic jars, and I sold 1,000 ceramic jars in like a day. And people fell in love with it, and it becoming like a collector's item. So fast forward years later, I did another version of it in like a melamine jar to like a Redux. And then that disappeared. That was like 10,000 units. So that was a big production. And eventually people were like, "Are you guys going to make this as a regular line?" So I came up with a full line of black labels. By that's the only one that carries that label every day, because I do some limited editions that carry that label, but that's the only black label that actually has the silver accent.
And for the viewers, we can see the cool little head on that. It's really neat. And so this is because they like squinch it in a weird way, or how does this head come about?
Yeah, it's actually a harder head to make. The way that the family makes it, it's a harder head to make than a regular triple cap. Yeah. The triple, the foot is easy because you just start with a little bit of overlap on the wrapper when you apply it, right?
Yeah, let's see. We can show it.
But the head, they actually have to do it where it comes up to that kind of like twisted head, but then they have to apply a cap on top of that to make it look clean. So it ends up being a little bit more complicated to do that style.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, in the last couple of years, I've become like, because my taste was getting so expensive in cigars, and they were always limited editions, and I'm like, I want to be a core production kind of a guy. Like, I want to go to a store and it's always there, and so that's why like the Cab I Won, the brown label, the black label are like my absolute favorites. Though
you're my favorite person because I love hearing that.
No, it's the best because I mean, they're usually a little bit cheaper, but I just know that they're always consistent and they're always fantastic. And it's just like it's hip to go like, oh, this cigar, like, you know, they only had one field of tobacco leaf, and there were only, you know, 600 cigars made, and they cost $30 a piece. It's like, no, I don't go for that. But I love regular production stuff. Though I am very sad because I found a La Riqueza at a store, and I had it, and it was like the best thing. And I went back. I was at Draper, and they're like, he discontinued that, and I was like, he did. I was like, oh, that was so good.
It was.
I made one version, like a limited run of a new size of La Riqueza, but in a slightly different blend. And I always told people, I said, don't expect regular La Riqueza. This is not regular La Riqueza. And that came out 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's the one I had.
Yeah, it's like a big 54 ring gauge box press. But the La Riqueza line ultimately was one of my favorite cigars, and it was kind of one of those things. I'm a traditionalist when it comes to Cuban vitolas, and I love the old Cuban sizes. And La Riqueza was one of those lines I put in those old Cuban sizes, and all of those sizes kind of went out of fashion. So people stopped, you know, gravitating towards them. So now I'm using it to make limited runs and limited editions.
Gotcha.
But ultimately, the bigger test is to make a regular production always taste the same, or at least in that comfort zone that we talked about before. Because I want people to go back to that cigar and go, okay, there it is. It's still the same thing that I remember from when I started it, you know, before. Because I don't know if you've ever been into Cuban cigars or smoked a lot of Cuban cigars, but I grew up cutting my teeth with Cuban cigars. So I know what they used to taste like. And they don't taste like that anymore. And they actually went down in strength. They're actually milder than they used to be. And it's kind of disappointing, but I'm always searching Cuban cigars to see if they're coming back. But it's few and far between when I get one, I go, oh, there it is. Like I usually have to get a custom blend, what they call customs. I usually have to get a custom blend from someone that I'm like, okay, that's where it's old school again.
Yeah, it's we in preparation for this, we watched the Hand Rolled documentary, which is fantastic. Highly recommend it to anyone out there. It's on YouTube. But what I think is so fascinating is, like, everybody, like I've worked with a lot of Canadians, and I say, it's like, oh, you smoke cigars, what do you like? And they're like, oh, Cubans. And I was like, I hate that answer. Like, I get it, but it's like, it's just so frustrating. But like, what is it? Like, why does everybody want them? If they're not really that good anymore, is it because they used to be good? Ooh, look at that.
So that's got a crazy head to it. But yeah, let me see if I can get in the...
Is that the Britannica size?
No, this is actually a made-up size that we took a mold and altered it. This is a 6 1/8 by 48, tapered down to a 52.
Oh, interesting.
It's based off of one of... the mold size is based off of a cigar called Avion, but Avion is a box pressed, and this is a round. And we actually have to alter the head of the cigar and the foot of the cigar to make it the way it is.
Oh, cool.
But this is actually part of a new NFT project that I did with Smoke In.
Oh, yes. Yeah, let's talk about that, because that's super fascinating. Because, you know, when people say NFT, it's like, oh, like, you know, blockchain, all that stuff is like, what does this actually mean? But from what I've heard...
Well, don't ask me, because I still have no idea. But
I think it's so clever, because with La Flor Dominicana, what they did, I think it's so clever from a cigar retail point of view. If you could just explain, like, what you can in terms of, like, what it means to own one of the Anarchy NFTs.
Well, when you win one of the auctions, because the first and the second auction ended already, the third auction is live. When you win these, you end up winning the rights to get access to 60 boxes, so 900 cigars a year.
Wow.
So technically 7 people have access to 900 cigars a year, and they get to do whatever they want with it. They could give it away. They could sell it for $100 a stick. They could sell it for $50 a stick. They could they could save them and sell them in 10 years when cigars will be twice as much. You know, it's really up to them. But it's basically I'm stuck making this cigar for life because of this. And it's a good thing because I love making it. It's just I'm very cautious about how many I make of certain things.
Sure.
And this one was always supposed to be a small batch edition. So to have 420 boxes a year out there is not a big production.
Yeah.
And with the NFT winners, they actually get a utility package, which is a giant humidor that has 75 cigars in it. 15 of them are something we call a pale horse, which is the Anarchy in a different wrapper, which is a Connecticut Ecuador wrapper. And then you get a Line 2 DuPont lighter that matches the artwork because each NFT has individual artwork. Mm-hmm. And then you get a Zycar Perfect Cut, which is like a new XI1 Perfect Cut, which is the first time people are using it.
Wow.
Which matches the artwork also. And then a crystal ashtray that matches the artwork.
Oh, nice.
So the utility package alone is worth a lot of money because there's some things that just don't exist. So if you think about the Pale Horse, there was a total of 105 cigars made.
Wow.
Not a lot. I actually made 2 different versions of it. And at the last minute, I chose the Connecticut Ecuador because I realized that one was performing better than the other one, which was Corojo. So essentially, I have 105 Corojo sticks that I'll smoke myself.
There you go.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about, like, when you're interviewed, you're like, I only make cigars that I like because if the business goes down the tubes, I want to be able to smoke what I got.
I mean, it's the same philosophy I have in distribution. I only carry beers I like. My reps may not like them, but you know, because the beer goes out of date or I can't sell it and it's still good. You know, I'm gonna be drinking it. You know, but so this might be boring, but it fascinates me as a distributor. So how does cigar sales and distribution work? So like in alcohol, I'm forced to be a middleman. It's a 3-tier system.
Tiered.
Yeah,
3-tiered. Yeah.
Yeah. So how does it work for cigars?
Well, cigars used to be like that. Cigars kind of used to be like that. There was always a tobacco grower, and then there would be a manufacturer who bought the tobacco from the tobacco grower and made the cigars, and there was always someone that was the distributor of that product. And then from there, the retailer gets it and sells it to the consumer. But over the years, that's shifted pretty drastically. Because now, if you look at the family alone, they're completely vertically integrated. Mm-hmm. They grow their own tobacco, they make their own cigars, they sell their own cigars to the retailers. So they're all the tiers. I'm technically the second tier of if you think of the consumer as one of the tiers.
Sure.
So because I get my product directly from the family who actually grows their tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
We still buy tobacco from other tobacco growers. It's like certain things like Habano Ecuador or Connecticut Ecuador or Connecticut Broadleaf or Mexican San Andreas or Sumatra Ecuador. We always have suppliers that we go to for that particular product because these are also the suppliers of those particular seed varietals that are like the best in the business. So we always have a good choice of tobacco to work with. But when it comes to a lot of the wrappers, I'm using like the Black Label wrapper. That's 100% Garcia grown tobacco.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
We both look at it.
Yeah, I just love that this is a Nicaraguan Puro. We're also huge fans of Flor de las Antillas.
Yes.
And
great cigar.
Yeah, it's and
I smoke my fair share of that cigar.
Yeah.
Actually.
Well, it's great because it's only like the Robusto is $8, and that cigar is so good.
Yeah.
It's so easy to smoke. I tell everybody it's probably. Sorry, I'm lighting my cigar looking down so I don't burn my fingers. I tell everybody if you want to buy a box of cigars that's kind of for everybody, and like let's say you like Tatuaje and you want to have some friends over, but they can't smoke stronger cigars. Yeah, I obviously want them to buy a Cobb I One, but I'm like, go buy a box of Flor de las Antillas. Everybody will like it. Even the guy that wants a strong cigar will love that cigar.
Yeah.
Because it's really well balanced, and ultimately, a good cigar for me is about balance. It has to have balance on your palate. If there's no balance to it, it's just you're smoking cigars for the wrong reason.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Because that's one of the reasons I love the Cab I One, because some Connecticut wrap cigars, like, they kind of have like an acrid taste to it, like it's just kind of like off.
Yeah.
But that's a perfect word. It's very balanced. There's so much flavor, but it doesn't knock you over.
Well, that's Connecticut Ecuador, and Connecticut Ecuador normally will give you a more earthier note and rounded note to it, and it pairs really well with Nicaraguan tobacco.
Gotcha.
Because Nicaraguan tobacco in general is heavier, and no matter what we do, we can go as mild as possible, and Nicaraguan tobacco is still going to have some strength to it.
Gotcha.
So the Connecticut Ecuador just rounds out that flavor and gives you that creamy note. But Connecticut, like Connecticut shade grown in Connecticut, USA, that usually would have sometimes more of a vegetal note to it. And I think that's probably why a lot of people shifted to Connecticut Ecuador.
Does anybody use regular Connecticut shade anymore? Because when I look at blend notes, I almost always see Connecticut Ecuador.
Yeah, Fuente
Oh.
and Ashton. Davidoff switched years ago to Ecuador. They at one time were using regular Connecticut, but they switched immediately to Connecticut Ecuador. Yeah, a lot of people use Connecticut Ecuador, and most people get it from this family called the Perez family, ASP, because they're kind of the leaders when it comes to it.
Oh, neat.
Plus a really good family, like a really good group of people.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Yeah, this is sort of related. I'm a big movie guy. I was watching The Verdict with Paul Newman. I don't know if you've ever seen it. But there's a part where, like, he's trying to track down this witness, and he's a cigar smoker, and he goes to this newsstand. He's like, what's your best cigar? Like, and this is 1982. It's like, what's a box of your best cigars? He was like, Macanudos, and it's $32.50 a box. Can you believe that price? Yeah. And
No.
what, like, Macanudos 40 years ago, like, was that like a completely different blend? I don't know if you're familiar with the cigars were back then, but weren't they like mostly Jamaican? Like, because now it's mostly Dominican stuff, right?
Macanudo obviously started in Jamaica and then shifted to the Dominican pretty quickly. So we didn't see, back when that movie was made, they were Jamaican, but it was like usually like around, I think, the mid 80s, you started seeing product come from both countries, and eventually they left. And they still owned brands that they made in Jamaica, like a brand called Royal Jamaica. Mm-hmm. But then eventually that brand ended up switching to the Dominican Republic. And I think it was really about just the workforce. I think a lot of rollers left Jamaica, and there was nobody down there, not a good capacity of rollers to get a good enough production. So, and obviously it was easy use for a lot of these companies that own these brands. They're like, why are we making cigars in multiple factories when we can just put it into one?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Indeed. So, I have a question as someone, Thomas probably knows the answer, but you're here, so I'll ask you. So, yeah. I tend to like a box press. Oh, I mean, I like both, but something about, I don't know if it's just the fit in my hand or what, but like, what does it do to a cigar to press it like that?
Well, we use a factory press. So ultimately the cigars come off the bench, and they're to do a cigar that's going to ultimately be box pressed or squished. You need to build the cigar in a way to almost where it's, in a sense, underbunched a little bit.
Okay.
Because you have to be able to press it down and still have airflow. Mm-hmm. If you end up making a cigar like it's supposed to be a full, firm, round cigar, and you try to press it, you're gonna start locking up the airflow, and you're gonna get dowels. But yeah, what happens is they come off the bench and they go into these trays, and then they automatically go into this giant, like, hand crank press. And the trays sit up on top of each other and push the cigars down to a certain amount of pressure to make sure that they get that squareness. And what ultimately happens is those cigars end up fitting to the height of the tray, because the tray is actually framed to the height of the actual size that you want to achieve.
Gotcha.
So is the pressing do anything to the flavor, or is it just for packing purposes?
It's so the cigar won't roll off the table.
I've definitely had that happen.
But if I gave you a cigar that is round and a cigar that's box pressed with the same exact blend, they will taste different.
Okay.
Mouthfeel, obviously, but there is, there's a psychological thing too that you're like, no, this is absolutely a different cigar. And I've had a little bit of a debate here and there with some critics, because they're like, no, it's got to be the same cigar. I go, no, because again, you're under bunching the cigar in a way to be able to compress it.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get two cigars, because I came out with a cabinet version, which was round, and a box press version of La Riqueza, and they're like, well, they're the same cigar. I go, well, yeah, but they're different, because it does do something to the ultimate blend.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that La Riqueza was so good.
That was really good.
Yeah, and that's why it's like this is why I stick to core production cigars, because it's like, I'm so mad I can't just go and buy another one.
Yeah, I mean, if I made that cigar in round, it would have tasted different too.
Yeah, that was so good. So talking about movies, I want to talk about your background, because I know you originally started Tatuaje in L.A. And
the company's still there.
And you worked at the Grand Havana Room. And I, of course, being Italian, big Sopranos fans, and I know...
it's a requirement.
Yeah. Joe Pantoliano was big in the Grand Havana Room. And do you have any fun Joey Pant stories or any like celebrity stories from working there?
I mean, I have a few Joey Pants stories that I probably can't repeat.
That sounds like it tracks.
Yeah.
No, Joey was a friend. Obviously, when I was a member, I was a member before I became an employee of the Grand Havana Room. Ultimately, I ended up being the only employee that was allowed to be a member, because I had a membership before I became an employee.
Gotcha.
So I kind of forced my way into saying, no, I need to keep my membership. So I would see Joey a lot. I played poker with him. He was part of kind of a small group of people that would always see each other and kind of hang out with each other. But obviously I was a kid compared to these guys.
Yeah.
But one of my best friends was a guy much older than me, because we just had a good bond over cigars, and he knew he liked me because I knew cigars. And I liked him because he was a funny old dude that would, that had beautiful memories he was a movie director, and he had really cool memories about directing certain movies and funny stories about directing movies, something that I can't repeat either. He ultimately passed away, but he was a dear friend. He ended up directing Tombstone.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. A guy by the name of George P. Cosmatos. Kind of a grumpy old Greek, but once you became friends with him, he was like your best friend.
That's cool. It seems like, because he did a interview with Cigar Aficionado in the 90s, and I read that when all the Sopranos cast was on the cover of Cigar Aficionado. And, just like the stories, like it seems like he was pals with Marvin Shankin, for those of you who don't know, the editor, the creator of Cigar Aficionado. And like it sounded like Tom Cruise was there a lot, like because you were there like in the 90s.
Cruise, I never really saw Cruise there at all. Mel Gibson was there all the time.
Oh, that's cool.
Arnold, of course. Stallone was there all the time. You'd see character actors like Pants was a character actor. Joe Mantegna, Tom Selleck, This guy named Robert Davi, who was in a bunch of movies, always played a bad guy or a police officer or an FBI agent or something like that. But yeah, I mean, once you walk through those doors, you're no longer a celebrity.
Ah, that's cool.
You're a cigar smoker, and that's why, like Peter Weller, who narrated the Hand Roll documentary, is a friend. And I saw Peter at the club one night, and I was like, I told the guys that were making the film with me, I said, give me a second, I'm going to ask someone a question. And I walked over to Peter, I said, what would it take for you to narrate a documentary? He goes, a couple $1,000 and a couple boxes of cigars. I go, are you really are you joking or are you for real? And he goes, no, I could do that because he's got a perfect voice for it. Plus he does a lot of narration.
Sure.
So ultimately we were able to get Peter Weller, who, RoboCop, to be the narrator of Hand Roll.
That because I watched it with my wife because I was like, you need to learn more about cigars, and I was like, this narrator is fantastic. He has like that classic documentary voice. It was fantastic.
It was fun recording him because we actually had to record it. There's like this little side room at the Grand Event Room, and we didn't have a sound booth, but we kind of muffled everything as much with like pillows from the couches and stuff.
Oh, that's funny.
And put cushions around the microphone. And as he was reading some of the lines, because obviously the directors, Steve and Jesse, and the writers, they wrote all the script of the narration, and he would be like, "Is this true?" and Steve would look at him. He's like, "Yeah, 100%." And Peter's a historian. I mean, he does narration for like National Geographic documentaries. So, plus he has a doctorate in European history, I think.
Oh, really?
Wow,
that's cool.
Yeah.
No, I loved it, and I thought it was the perfect amount of like educational, and then like, because it does definitely have like a point to it. It has like a I don't know if I would say like a political message, but like I know, with all the fights with the FDA, and I do want to talk to you about the recent ruling.
Yeah.
I thought it was very effective. Just the people you were able to get, it was very cool.
Well, it was important to get, a good cross section of people that, people are going to have an opinion, whether it be left or right. But we definitely had a narrative to kind of like, talk about the FDA is coming at a small boutique cottage industry unfairly.
Yeah.
So in that scope, we all agreed on one thing, which was like, this is unfair. So it's really, it was really well done to get a lot of politicians in the mix, and to get guys like Manchin to talk about it, and even he thought it was completely unfair. And you definitely, I think we had a good mix of people, and ultimately this decision that came up just recently with the FDA was a long 5-year, 6-year battle, technically about 7 years, but a really expensive legal battle for the industry. And we're all very excited, but we still have a little bit to go, just because we don't know if the FDA will appeal it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So what does it mean now that the ruling has happened? Because, and for those of you who are watching this, many years in the future, this was shot in 2022, and the ruling just came out, like last week, 2 weeks ago? So does this mean that the cigar boxes will no longer have the FDA warning on it, or is it more than that? Is it?
No, the warning labels got struck down, I think, a year and a half ago. Basically, the judge came and said that it's completely unfair because it goes against the First Amendment.
Oh, interesting.
So that got shot down very early on, and we were all prepared for it. But they're like, no, this doesn't make sense.
Sure.
Last year we kind of had a reprieve. Like, okay, they're gonna. I think we won like a piece of the victory but there was no like. Basically, the judge went back to the FDA and said, "You need to go back and figure your crap out before you come out at this small industry to regulate them. And if you don't, I'm going to end up ruling however I feel fit." And the most recent ruling was him basically vacating the whole judgment completely, and he said the FDA is no longer allowed to try to regulate premium cigars. Premium cigars are exempt from regulation because they are not part of big tobacco. They're made differently, and there's no way that you can really regulate it because of the constant change in the way tobacco grows and the way cigars are made.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous to try to do that.
It was an overreach. It was broad. So it was like, hey, tobacco, we're going to regulate it. But they had no clue how they were going to regulate it. They just kind of made up stuff, and then they started talking about making cigar factories almost into like labs, like a Pfizer lab in a tobacco factory, and you need to make sure you had your temperatures and your humidities, always the same. You like in clean rooms, and everything had to be done like super like. The water filtration had to be at this pH level, and we're like, this is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't make sense because the reality is that cigars are made so differently. It's a handmade product that you get a piece of material that doesn't have any altering to it. When we make a blend, but the blend constantly shifts slightly. So there's no way for you to pinpoint and say, it has to be 100% this all the time.
Yeah.
So in a cigarette, I'll talk about cigarettes for a second, even though I hate talking about them, but in a cigarette, they're manipulated, and there is a true, like, formulated, calculated blend that they put together and know that it's exactly the same thing every time.
Yeah, because when you look at a cigarette, it's all chopped up. You look at this, it's like this is a leaf that's wrapped up, with a bunch of other leaves.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's like very simple terms, but like this is definitely a natural product, whereas a cigarette is definitely manufactured.
Cigar smokers have an obsession with rolled up, dried pieces of leaf.
Yeah. What was that Bob Newhart sketch where he's talking to Sir Walter Riley on the phone or whatever?
Oh yeah.
And he's like, wait, you see, you dry the leaves and you smoke it.
You roll it up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, light it on fire. Yeah. I think it was like him on the phone, like in the 1600s or something. It's pretty goofy.
The phone comic.
So, what would you say to a millennial who's trying to get into cigars, but grew up in a like tobacco is bad kind of a thing? In elementary school, it's like this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, but then it's like, oh, a cigar, like is like. How would you help somebody come to terms with trying a cigar, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm never the type of guy that actually tries to like promote people to smoke cigars. It's not for everybody.
Right.
And a lot of times people ask me what I do for a living. I'm like, well, kind of in an interesting industry. And they're like what? Because I never know how people are going to react when I say I make cigars. I had the random time, I had a customs agent, of all people. He goes, what were you doing in Nicaragua? I go, I'm a cigar maker. And he started, like, lecturing me about how bad smoking is. And that he had a family member pass away from, smoking. And I was like, I'm sorry to hear that, but did they smoke cigars? Did they smoke cigarettes? Well, they were a cigarette smoker. I go, well, it's a vastly different item. Yeah. But I'm like, as soon as I got out of customs, I actually went up to a supervisor. I was like, whose job is it to lecture me about the work I do for a living?
And you got put in a special room, right?
Yeah. Luckily, no. Yeah. But I'm never really into like telling people like, oh, you got to try it, because it's not for everybody.
Sure. Yeah.
But I will say there's a lot of people that are scared to try it because they're afraid to walk through that door in a cigar store, because a lot of times you walk through that door, it's very intimidating. There's a bunch of guys sitting there in the room.
When you go and the first time
smoking,
sniff the wrapper. You know?
Yeah.
Smoking cigars. But I always say that if you decide to try it, don't be afraid to ask dumb questions. And I always tell retailers, don't be snarky and don't laugh at the person asking dumb questions.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, if you make a good impression on them, they're going to come back and they're going to want to learn more about it. But if someone's new to the cigar business or new to the cigar world, I definitely recommend watching Handrolled.
Yeah.
Because it will kind of wake you up to what it's all about and how we make cigars. And ultimately, it will give you a better appreciation of what you might want to try out.
No, I know.
It's like the first time you have alcohol.
Yeah. No, that's a good.
I know we're rolling close to when you probably have to get going, but I did want to add, so you're in Miami right now?
I'm in Miami right now. Again, I have a fan blowing on me, so I feel like I'm on stage.
So Florida is the only other state I could ever see me moving to. I love the heat. Everyone else in my family, well, not this family, but like my wife and is like we went to Disney.
It'll feel just like Sicily.
I mean, we were at Disney World last year and I was drenched. I was just like, everyone's dying. I'm just going around like this is great, But I've driven through Miami. I've never been in it, and we were thinking about doing like maybe a sibling trip down there. I think that'd be really cool. But obviously there's the cigar scene and like what is, to bring it back, since we are the Rum Brothers, is there anything happening rum wise in Miami, that any local distilleries or anything like that are worth checking out?
Yeah, and also like if we were to do like a cigar tour of Miami, like is that are the can you tour factories, like what's it like?
Yeah, I mean, Southwest 8th Street, obviously, Little Havana, you want to go down there during the daytime, not the nighttime. There are a couple cigar factories down there working, small. We actually used to be on Southwest 8th Street, but when the Garcias bought a building in Doral, they moved the factory into the back of the building in Doral. So if you're ever down here, I'll take you on the 2-minute tour, because that's really what it is.
2 minutes.
Like in Nicaragua, you need like 3 days.
Wow.
Because there's a lot to see.
Oh, wow.
Obviously, we don't grow tobacco here in Miami.
Yeah.
As far as rum goes down here, I don't know if there are any rum distilleries down here.
Yeah,
there might be, but
it's weird
I'm
to
not
think
sure.
that they are because I know there is a big beer scene in Florida, because that's more my wheelhouse. But I
think it would be really cool, though.
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? But then of course, that could be your little next pet project. Start a rum distillery.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
a Tatuaje rum, that would be really that'd be really good.
That would actually, but I would probably get sued by Captain Morgan Tattoo.
Oh, jeez.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I pulled out the headphone.
Yeah, our shared.
That was actually good footage. You should keep that.
Yeah, but yeah, it's really been interesting just trying. A lot of times it's hard to get a good U.S. rum, and talking about how Miami doesn't grow, tobacco. Our hometown used to grow so much tobacco.
Yeah,
it used to be
200 years ago.
It used to be a port town, but the tobacco eroded all the soil into the river. And so now there's just a little creek there. They used to have full ships of the line come into it, but so that was the other reason I was interested about like the sourcing of tobacco, because I know tobacco does take a toll on the earth, and that you have to do the crop rotation. As part of our social studies in elementary school, we learned about the local tobacco industry.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a place like Connecticut or the Connecticut River Valley, there used to be 20,000 acres of tobacco being grown every year.
Yeah.
And now they're probably under 2,000 acres.
Wow.
Yeah.
What would that be?
A lot of people just got out of the business.
Yeah.
A lot of people ended up selling their property to people building, houses and condominiums, and land value just became too expensive. and it wasn't worth for people to grow tobacco anymore. But there's some people that grow it because that's what they love to do, and that's what they know best to do. I mean, we make cigars. This family, the Garcias, make cigars because this is what they've been doing all their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see them going into the rum business.
No, you would go into
So I know we're running short, but I have a list of questions. We can do like a Spitfire kind of a deal.
Sure.
So there's a great story about this comes back to cigars, I promise. There's a cool story about Kurt Cobain when they were recording Nevermind in the studio.
Okay.
And he was like, I want this like a pure studio recording, and he didn't want to double track any vocals. And the producer was like, hey, Kurt, John Lennon double tracked vocals, so you should do it. And he was like, okay, I guess if John Lennon did it, I'll do it. So is that kind of how you view Cuba? Like, do you only do stuff like if Cuba did it, I'll do it, or is
Yeah. A lot of times, I'm a traditionalist when it comes to the wheel where cigars started, which is Cuba. And I had friends when I first started the brand years ago, obviously 20 years ago. I had friends asking me for like crazy cigars and like, well, yeah, but I like the Cuban Vitolas. I stick to those sizes. If they do it, maybe I'll think about it. And a friend of mine actually came back from Cuba with a gift from a roller down there that was like a short 5x60.
Wow.
And a buddy of mine had asked me for a 60 ring gauge cigar, and I was like, well, if Cuba's going to do it, I'm going to beat them to the punch. So I ended up making that's where the Grand Kohonu came out, and that was a 6.5 by 60. And now I make a 5x60 also called the Series L. Sorry, the Series A, Grand Kohonu Series A. But it was always like I love the Cuban Vitolas. I love the history part. So a lot of times I won't do certain things if Cuba's not doing it, but they're kind of all over the place now, so I'm all over the place now too.
Oh, there you go.
But in the early days, it was very traditional.
Gotcha.
Every size was a Cuban size. Other manufacturers and friends of mine would be like, what's up with you and like all these weird sizes like 5 7/8 and 5 5/8? I'm like, well, that's the true Vitola. Like that's the Vitola that started, so I want to make sure I use the exact size.
That's cool. So I'm a big fan of figurados, and just like anything shaped. One thing this may not be something you can clear up, but like, what's the difference between a bellicoso, a torpedo, and a pyramid? Because I feel like those, like across all the brands, are like interchangeable almost. And I was wondering if you could help clear that up.
In the classic Cuban portfolio, there's piramides and bellicosos, or what they would call campañas. They have a different shaped head, like a figurado, like a pyramide or a torpedo. What we think of a torpedo has more of a pointed, tapered head, and by the time you get down to the band, it's still tapering.
Okay.
But a bellicoso actually goes up more straight and then curves to a pointed head, but more of a rounded pointed head.
Okay.
And usually by the time you get down to the band, it's the same ring gauge all the way down.
Gotcha.
Then, there is a cigar in the industry called a pyramide that when I think of a pyramide, I think of the old Cuban, torpedo, or what they would call a pyramide. But a lot of people started making this weird shaped cigar that almost looks like a trumpet. It tapers all the way down. So there's no like straight surface from the band down. It literally tapers all the way from the foot to the head, or the mouth to the head.
It's like a joint.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah. If you look in, Padron used to make a pyramide in the 1964 line.
Yeah,
it looks like a trumpet.
Yeah, I saw one in the store the other day. Yeah, like we like to get the $6. Drew Estate makes the Nasty Frida, which is basically like the trimmings of the Liga Privada number 9.
Yeah.
And I like, because I love all the tobacco in that, and I pick up those because those are they're
That's
cheap.
a fun cigar.
Yeah, and
not the first cigar of the night. That's
yeah,
two in.
yeah, right. Yeah, I just think that's super interesting because I feel like it's not, because like a Monte Cristo number 2, Is that is it because of the length it's called? Is that called a pyramid or is that called a torpedo? Like
that's what we call a torpedo, but that's a pyramid.
oh, okay.
Yeah. In the Cuban portfolio, it's called a pyramid.
Interesting. Okay. And I also love.
Ultimately, they're all called figurados.
Okay, we'll just encompass it.
There you go.
And like I'm a big movie buff. Like I said before, I love old movies, and they're always smoking what I think. I mean, they're definitely perfectos, but they're like tapered at both ends. Is that like a double perfecto? Is that a thing, or what would be?
No, they would call it a perfecto.
Okay.
A double perfecto. I think that's just. I don't know where the word double perfecto came from, because a perfecto would be a shaped cigar that actually points on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if people started calling them double perfectos, but I don't know the history of that.
It could be just a marketing thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, we were just having this conversation the other day about, like there's certain sizes that just feel like a stogie.
Yeah.
And you see those, like the bulldog from Bugs Bunny or Bugs Bunny cartoons always smoking that kind of like shaped cigar, or the boss in the film was always smoking a shaped cigar.
Yeah.
That would be considered a perfecto, but I don't know if double perfecto came from like when they started getting bigger
Oh, interesting.
and fatter, and they started calling them
The
double
size.
perfectos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. We.
because originally perfectos were really tiny.
Oh, interesting.
Most cigars back in the old days were really small.
Yeah.
And skinny.
Well,
Oh,
people were
interesting.
smaller back then.
Yeah, right. But it's like, we both have young kids, and watching like Pinocchio, where there's that scene where they're smoking cigars, and they kind of look like the La Auroras that you get in the tubes.
Preferito, yeah.
But they're like, they come out to the middle and then they go down, and it's just like,
Did you think he'd be talking about Pinocchio?
Pinocchio, yeah. But it's,
I'd talk about anything.
yeah, I just think it's so interesting, and I know figurados aren't as popular. Like I was listening to an interview with Eric Espinoza, who's like, and he was talking, the guy was asking him about Bellicoso, and he was like, well, when was the last time you smoked a Bellicoso? And like all this stuff is like, yeah, probably like never. And I like the Cab Juan in that size is fantastic.
Yeah, if you look at a Cab Juan Bellicoso and you put it next to a Tatuaje Unico,
Yeah, there we go.
you'll see the difference in the shape and the head. The Bellicoso head is a little wider. The head on what we call a torpedo or a pyramide is a little skinnier.
Gotcha.
So it tapers later. Like if you're going up the cigar from what we call the mouth or the foot of the cigar, which you light. This is what's weird about the way you refer to parts of the cigar, but because most of the time we say that we're going to toast the foot,
Yeah.
but we also call that the boquilla, which is the mouth of the cigar.
Oh, interesting.
And it's not the part that you put in your mouth, which is, this is Cuba, typical Cuban, right, where they just have a ton of different words for the same meaning.
Oh, funny.
But you'll notice that it goes up the cigar and then tapers later.
Gotcha.
But if you look at a torpedo or a pyramide, it tapers a little bit quicker up past the band.
Why do you think those aren't as popular?
I think they just kind of lost their vibe. I mean, Monte 2s used to be the most requested cigar out there. Obviously, the most produced cigar in Cuba still to this day, I think, is a Monte No. 4, which is a Mareva, which is a 5 1/8 by 42.
Oh, interesting.
Small Petit Corona. But a Monte 2 and a Diplomatico 2 and an H. Upmann No. 2, those were super popular because they were, I don't know what it was. It was one of those sizes that, was a bigger cigar at the time than a lot of other cigars, and people just liked that shape. But then one day, it just kind of became out of fashion. It's not as popular as it used to be, although if you look at a Le Bijou Torpedo, it still sells like crazy.
Yeah, that is fantastic. You
I
had
had
one
one
last
last
night. Yeah.
spent way too much money on it. It was one of those stores that I'm paying your rent right now, aren't I?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's super interesting because like the H. Upmann number 2 was Cigar of the Year, as you probably know. And that for Cigar Aficionado. And that leads me to another question.
This is a good lightning round.
Right, yeah, I know. But I love Cigar Aficionado, like definitely a subscriber. I read it cover to cover. But what frustrates me is it's like I love reading what famous people's favorite thing to smoke is because I think that's interesting. Like I started drinking Coors Banquet again when Jack Nicholson drank that in 5 easy pieces. I was like, yes, Coors Banquet, let's go. But how come like all these celebrities, it's like, oh, my favorite cigar is a Partagas Serie D and all this stuff. And it's like, this is so frustrating. You guys live in America and you're smoking Cuban cigars like it's water. How, and I know you can't reveal it necessarily, and I know you know how it happens, but like, how do they get all these Cuban cigars?
Well, they're probably traveling overseas, or they have a guy that comes to see them in Hollywood.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'll be honest, when I was younger, I was one of those guys.
I remember that from one of the interviews. Yeah.
But at the same time, because I think I heard you saying like you would go like to look through all the boxes and you would like pick and choose from boxes because it's like you would get a box but only like maybe a third were smokable. Is that right?
Well, I mean, over the years, you know, when you think about Cuban cigars and the consistency and the quality, there was always that fear that you would get a box of cigars and like half of them would be smokable. But when I was looking at a lot of cigars, when I was doing stuff when I was younger and purchasing a lot of Cuban cigars, I would go through hundreds of boxes of cigars and find 20.
Wow.
So I was just really picky about what I was buying because ultimately, not only was I smoking them, but I was probably selling them to someone.
Yeah. Your customers probably liked you, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that philosophy kind of transitioned to your current company where you don't put out crap. I've never been disappointed in a Tatuaje cigar, which, you know, that's hard. You know, I'm not someone who's always all in on something. It's just like I like this, I don't like, you know. But I have not had a bad one from Tatuaje. And I've had quite a few. I haven't tried that. I got a Fausto. I haven't tried that yet, though.
That's pretty strong, so beware of it. But I mean, the reality is, it is a handmade product, and nothing's absolutely perfect. I'm really picky about, obviously, what happens with the cigars that are made for Tatuaje. But ultimately, I can't guess whether or not the roller's having a bad day.
Gotcha.
And you never know if you know, Monday morning the roller came off from a bender on the weekend. And you also never know on Friday night he just wants to get out of work early.
Right.
So
that's interesting.
there's always been that joke in our industry is like, never buy a cigar that was rolled on Monday morning and never buy a cigar that was rolled on Friday night.
That's funny.
What if the FDA made you stamp what day of the week it was rolled on? You know?
Yeah, there's never really any way to know because once, you know, thousands of cigars are made and they all go into a grading table and they grade them by color. So there's really no way to tell when or what day or what time or what
Unless
person
you're
rolled
really
that particular
small,
cigar.
Right,
yeah.
Wait, did you roll this on a Friday?
We probably should wrap up, but did you have any more pressing questions?
I did have one that.
Okay.
So I read an interview that John Pepin did a while back, and he said that because he was talking about Cigar Aficionado, because that's where it was done, that the cigar that would score 100 points would be a blend of Cuban and Nicaraguan tobaccos, and he said Cuban wrapper, Nicaraguan binder, filler would be from Esteli and Jalapa, Seco from Villa Clara, Viso from Pinar del Rio, and he was like, that would be the perfect cigar.
Yeah.
Do you agree that kind of a blend could like be like the ultimate blend? And
I believe if the tobacco that they got from Cuba was sourced and processed properly, I don't believe that if someone bought those tobaccos and just tried to make that particular blend that they would come up with a great cigar because you never know how long the tobacco's been cured for, or if it's cured for properly. But now, I mean, when you think about what the Garcias do on their own, when he did that interview, he didn't grow wrapper in Nicaragua, and now he does.
Oh, interesting.
And I know I make a lot of 100%, pure Garcia tobacco cigars, both in Miami and Nicaragua. And there's sometimes, like that 54, it is 100% Garcia grown tobacco. And there's sometimes I smoke that and I'm like, if I give this to any Cuban snob, he'll never know that it's not made
Oh, interesting.
There you go.
in Cuba.
Yeah. So viewers out there know that the Cuban cigar is not the best cigar necessarily, and that's.
The best cigar is the one that's in your hand.
Hey, I love that.
That's ultimately the best
Yeah.
answer.
It is amazing how a cigar will taste, especially the company you keep. Like, I've had cigars just by myself. It's never as good when you're with people.
It's
Yeah.
never as good as when you are with people. Now that's super interesting. Do you envision the embargo lifting in our lifetimes?
I don't think so.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's hope that one day it will change, but as long as there's a family down there that's benefiting from all the hard work of everybody else,
Yeah.
I don't see it opening up anytime soon.
Gotcha.
Because it's a very oppressed country. There is no difference. There is no middle class. It's either you're super wealthy or you have no money.
Yeah.
I hate to get political about it, but it's very disturbing to see, over the years of what's happened down there. And
Yeah.
during the pandemic, there were, people struggling to get food. Even right now, they're struggling to get food.
Yeah.
And if you have money, I had a friend that just came back and he said there are Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Range Rovers and Bentleys on the streets. And I'm like, how? And he's like, there's people with a crap ton of money that obviously have ins with the government, and then there's the rest of the people that have no money. So it's kind of sad, but I don't see it changing unless something changes. Unless they really make it a democratic society,
Yeah.
it will never change.
Yeah.
But you said the going back to like a puro, like they have in Cuba, and that's something I didn't know until I started researching that Cuban cigars. It's like 100% Cuban tobacco, but.
Yeah.
So like the black label, and the brown label, is that 100% Garcia tobacco?
Well, okay, so the brown label in Miami, we make two different versions of them. We make some that have Habano Ecuador wrapper. So technically it wouldn't be a puro.
Oh, gotcha.
But we use the word puro synonymously with cigar. So a lot of times people call cigars puros.
Gotcha.
Because of where it stems from Cuba.
Gotcha.
And obviously, way back in the early days, a lot of cigars were single origin country type cigars. But we do make another line of cigars in Miami called Escasos. So it's the brown label, but with a different wrapper, and that's all 100% Garcia grown tobacco, and that's a puro.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Well, we know you have to go, and Thomas has got a nice sun
Well,
halo.
I got 3 minutes. The only thing I need to do is go get my AirBuds so I can actually hear this, because it's an Instagram live thing.
okay.
Is there one more question maybe that we can fit
no,
in?
Rapid fire.
No, I think that's
True rapid fire.
No, I think that's enough. I've
Well,
got others.
yeah.
Dude, listen, if you guys want to do this again sometime and fill in the blanks, I would be more than happy.
I mean,
Yeah, we would love to.
Yeah, and if the offer stands, we'd love to meet up with you in person, because Miami is a place we've always wanted to go, and we have Thomas may be moving, or
Yeah.
so
I'm going to be moving to
yeah.
Massachusetts soon, so if you're ever in New England, I'd love to. We can hit up.
So we need to plan. We need to be more diligent about planning trips. So yeah, I think that we should definitely make Miami the next sibling.
Yeah,
trip.
that would be cool. The first tatuaje I smoked was actually at a Lou's Cigar Bar in Providence. I don't know if you ever make your way to. Yeah, that's a cool spot. It's pretty new, but it's they got a great humidor, and it's a neat setup.
No, very cool.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Anytime, I'd be more than happy to get on with you, and we can actually get a little bit more in depth.
Sure.
Cool.
And You can ask me about the Jonas Brother thing,
Okay, great. Yeah, that'll be.
which we never got to.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
we have to get back to the Jonas
Yeah.
Brothers.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Yes,
Pete.
thank
This
you,
has been a
Pete. It was
pleasure.
awesome.
It's been a dream.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
I appreciate you guys.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Take care.
That was cool. That was cool.
It was really cool.
What a cool guy.